Hello everyone, welcome to the new session of fungal disease in crop plants. So this is the first part of this topic. So in this session, we are going to study about stem rust, leaf rust of wheat, leaf rust of barley, stripe rust and crown rust of oats. So basically we are going to study about rust disease that is caused by fungus. Okay, so in the different crop they infect the different parts, vegetative parts, that at some plant they infect to the stem, in some they infect to the leaf and stem both, and some they only infect to the leaf, right? So we are going to study about all these type of diseases and see the what type of causal organism are there. So let us start with the stem rust. Stem rust is a well recognized disease of the cereal crop. So basically this stem rust occur in the cereal crops. They occur in the cereal crops, occurring almost everywhere these crops are grown. And why they are called as rust? Because they occur in a pustules, small red color pustules that appear that there is a rust, that appear like a rust. Okay, so that is why it is called as stem rust. So suppose this is a stem, so we can see a red color pustules on it like a rust on the iron. So that is why it is called as stem rust, and it is a fungal disease. So it occur everywhere wherever the crop, this particular crop, that is cereals, are grown. So the first one, the Puccinia graminis triticale, that infect wheat, barley and triticale. So this is another variety of the wheat. So basically they infect wheat, barley and triticale. Puccinia graminis triticale, right? Puccinia graminis aveni infect oats. Okay, so Puccinia graminis aveni infect oat plant, and Puccinia graminis sicalis infect rye plant. So you have to remember the species, that which species infect which plant. So, okay, so first, once more, this Puccinia graminis triticale infect wheat and barley plant, wheat, barley and triticale, whereas Puccinia graminis aveni infect oat plant, and Puccinia graminis sicalis infect rye plant. So here you can see the red color pustules on the stem and also scattered on the leaves. So disease symptoms mostly and commonly appear on the stems and leaf sheath. So here this is the sheath region. Below is the sheath region that get attached to the stem. But leaf blades and spikes may also become infected when the infection is quite severe. So here we can see it is quite severe infection. The whole stem can seen here, it's becoming red in color. The sheath of the leaf is having red, and also the leaf blade is scattered red color. 3 spores forms are produced on the cereal host, right? So there are 2 types of host here. The on cereal host, first of all, cereal host, they are having 3 spores. The first one is uridospores, develops in pustules called uridia. So this is a pustules. Pustules means this is a region. This is called pustules, and this pustules is uridia. Now this uridia contain which spore? Uridiospores, right? That rupture. So when it is first, it is covered, but when ruptures, all the spores are released in the environment. So the rupture the epidermis and expose masses of reddish brown spores. So all the spores comes out when the epidermis of the stem get ruptured. So this is the first spore, that is uridospores that occur on cereal host. The pustules are larger than those of leaf and stipe rust, and oval shape or elongated with the loose or torn epidermal tissue along with the margin. So when that epidermal cells broken down, torn, so all this tissue can become exposed, and this pustules release out spores, right? So this is the leaf and stripe rust which is present on the leaf. They may appear on both the upper and the lower surface of the leaf. So this type of infection, this type of spores are present on the upper surface as well as the lower surface of the leaf. The uridospores of Puccinia graminis are reddish brown, elliptical to egg-shaped, annulate structures measuring 24 to 32 micrometer to 18 to 22 micrometer. So this is the measuring of the uridospores. So they are reddish brown. Here this is the microscopic structure showing the uridospores. They continue to be produced until the plant approaches maturity. So in severe infection, whole stems become red in color, reddish brown in color. So this uridospores are present in that way. As the plant approaches maturity, the uridospores production ceases and teleospores develop. Second type of spores, that is called as teleospores, develop either in the same uridia or in different fruiting structure called telea. So this uridia that bear uridospores, that at that place only the uridospores germinate and give rise to a new pustules that is called as telea, and this telea bears another type of spores that is called as teleospores. So this uridia that can changes into telea, or there can be a fresh infection. Fresh infection means the uridospores released from the uridia enters to another place either through the stomata or through other wound that is present on the stem. So they get enter and they form telea pustules and they bear teleospores. The teleospores are dark brown. So uridospores we have seen that is reddish brown, but this teleospores are dark brown, two-celled structure like this. And it is having hard covering also, two-celled structure. This is the two-celled structure like this and somewhat wedge shape. So they retain a portion of the pedicel or stalk. So you can see this is the stalk-like region and have thick walls. So walls are quite thick and measures 40 to 60 micrometer to 18 to 26 micrometer. So this is the measurement of the teleospores. The apical cell is rounded or slightly pointed. So here you can see it is quite pointed and at some places it is quite round. The teleospores frequently erupt through the epidermis. So they come out of the epidermis and persist in the plant tissue during the winter and may serve as the first stage in the sexual cycle by producing basidiospores. So there is a sexual reproduction in the fungi, this fungi. So there is a karyogamy process in the teleospores. Now this, after the karyogamy, the basidia are there. Basidia gives out basidiospores. So this is the third type of spores that occur in the cereal crops. Okay, basidiospores, third one. First one is the uridospores, second one is the teleospores, and the third one is the basidiospores. So the common barley, Barberries vulgaris, Mahonia species are alternate host of the Puccinia graminis. The uridospores of the stem rust are carried over a long distances by the wind. So they are carried to over the long distances by the wind. And during the active growth period, the host crops repeated cycles of uridia are produced every 14 to 21 days. So sometime what happened? There is a repeated, they can infect another wheat crop, right? So there is a again repeated cycles of the uridia, which accounts for the rapid spread of the disease over wide area. So this causes lot of destruction to the crop. This disease, along with the leaf rust, has received much attention from the pathologist, means plant pathologists, plant breeders, and other scientists. Right? So this particular disease is one of the very important disease that has been studied in the great detail, and this causes a lot of loss to the farmers. So in the past, the creation of a new physiologic races via sexual cycle on the alternate host, barberry. So the primary host that can be wheat, right? So alternate host is the barberry, resulted in the serious crop losses and reduced effectiveness of the resistance variety. So on barberries, two other types of spores are produced, that is ficniospores, and another one is aciospores. So these two types of spores occur on barberry plant. Right? So these are the two spores. Whereas on the cereal crop, for example, wheat, we are having uridospores, teleospores, and basidiospores. So the basidiospores infect barberry and aciospores infect wheat to complete the life cycle. So you must remember these points. What type of spores? Total this stem rust is having 5 different types of spores. Three occur on wheat or other cereal crop and 2 on the barberry. You must remember this. So what type of spores that occur on wheat, what type of spores that occur on barberry, this can be asked. In North America, the eradication of barberry and deliberate breeding of the resistant varieties have been important factors in improving the stability of the resistance to the stem rust in varieties and reducing the incidence of epiphytotoxins. So this is one of the way to eradicate this particular fungi. Okay. Leaf rust of wheat. So this is caused by Puccinia recondite. Leaf rust is a serious disease of wheat, rye, triticale, and many other grasses. So this is not the Puccinia graminis triticale, it is Puccinia recondite. The pathogen is mildly parasitic on barley but does not infect oats. Another closely related species is Puccinia hordi, is a common pathogen on barley. Leaf rust appears as a small oval-shaped dark red pustules scattered on the leaf sheath. So here this is the region of leaf sheath. So here you can see how this pustules, you can see this leaf rust and the upper surface of the leaf blade. So this is not only confined to the sheath region, but it is also present on the leaf blade. The pustules, that is uridia. So how this uridia pustules are present, you can see in this figure. It's break through the epidermis, but do not cause loose epidermal tissue at the margins, as is characteristic of the stem rust uridia. So this is the uridia pustules that bears uridospores. The uridospores of Puccinia recondita are orange-red to the dark red, spherical, and usually measure 20 to 28 micrometer in diameter. So these are the uridospores. They are measured to 22, their measurement ranges to 20 to 28 micrometer in diameter. Okay. The teleospores, another type of spores, that is teleospores, are dark brown. So teleospores we have already discussed in the stem rest. They are two-celled and they are having a stalk or pedicel. So they are having at the top region, they are having oval shape or pointed, rounded, flattened at the apex. So this is quite dark brown in color, that is teleospores. The telea develop during the later stages of plant development in sori, on leaf sheath, and on both the surface of the leaf plate. So this teleospores, that is the telea pustules, that can be found on both the surfaces of the leaf, upper and lower surface, and there is a development of sori on the leaf sheath. The teleospores remain in the leaf tissue and are covered by the epidermis. So, how this teleospores are present? Suppose this is a sheath region. So, this is the epidermis and this is the cortex, mesophyll cells. So, here two-celled teleospores we can see. So, they are attached. And they are present in quite group like this. So this particular region is called as sori. They are present on sori, and this whole region is called as telea pustules, which bear teleospores. Teleospores, two-celled spores. So the teleospores remain in the leaf tissue and are covered by the epidermis. So basically this is covered by the epidermis. Thalictrum and Ancusa species, the alternate host of Puccinia recondita, occur in some areas of Europe but are unimportant as a source of new races of these fungus. So these are the two, we can say, alternate host, Thalictrum and Ancusa species. In temperate climate, the pathogen survives from year to year as a mycelium or uridospores on winter cereals and grasses. So they are present in the form of uridospores and they can survive from year to year. They can survive in this particular uridospores form in winter cereal crops and also on some grasses. In the tropics, it oversummers at high elevations and in cooler areas. Leaf rust is best controlled by the use of resistant cereal crop varieties. So we can develop this, for this leaf rust disease, we can develop some resistant crop varieties. We can also spray some fungicides such as triadimefon, that is Baleton and Butrizol. So these are name of the fungicides, okay, are quite effective in controlling the leaf rust and can be used economically in the epidermic situation. So when these spores are present on the epidermal region, these fungicides can be spread to eradicate this disease. Puccinia hordi, leaf rust occur extensively in many barley growing areas of the world. So this particular Puccinia hordi infect the barley plant, but the crop loses its causes are usually light. The pathogenicity of this fungus is restricted to the cultivated barley and its close relatives. So not only it infect the barley plant, but it also infect the close relatives of this plant. Barley is also affected by some races, that is Puccinia recondita, but to a lesser extent. It means that they can also get infected by the Puccinia recondita. But basically, the main fungus that infect barley is the Puccinia hordi. The uridia of the Puccinia hordi are quite small. Here you can see they are not as bigger as in the case of wheat. Right? So they are quite small, oval to round and yellow orange in color. So they are not dark brown, but they are yellow orange in color. They develop almost exclusively on the leaf blades and sheaths. So they are present on the leaf blade as well as on the sheath. So here you can see they are present on the leaf sheath region. These are the uridospores. The uridospores are egg-shaped. They are quite, you can see, egg-shaped to spherical, yellow and relatively large, measuring 28 to 36, 11 m to 28, 24 to 28 into 11 micrometer. As the crop matures, the dark brown tilia form in the leaf tissue and initially remain covered with the epidermis. So after the uridospores, teleospores is formed and they get covered with the epidermis region. They are not exposed to outside. Alternate host is Ornithogallum umbellatum, that is the star of Bethlehem. This is the common name and can be the source of aciospores. So after teleospores, aciospores in some areas of Europe, but does not appear and become infected in the North America. It is unlikely that it plays an important role in the perpetuation or the dissemination of a new diverse form of the pathogen. So basically, the first one is the uridospores, next is teleospores, and some after that aciospores is formed. But in all, it is not found this aciospores in all the areas, right? The development and the spread of leaf rust of barley is favored by the warm, humid weather. So they require quite warm, humid weather for this particular infection. The uridial stage or overwinters on fall sown barley in areas having mild winters. The subtropical areas of the fungus survive summer temperature. So they require quite summer temperature in the cooler highland. The use of resistant varieties is the most economical means of control. So if we want to control this particular pathogen, then we must use the resistant varieties. Stripe rust. Next disease is the stripe rust. Puccinia striformis. Stripe rust is a serious disease of wheat, barley and moderately affects triticale, rye and some other grasses also. So basically this is stripe rust that caused by the Puccinia striformis. Basically it is this particular disease is quite serious for crop like wheat, barley. But sometimes it also affect triticale, rye and some other grasses. But this is a moderate type of infection. It is not as severe infection that we can see in the case of wheat and barley. The oat appears to be immune. So we do not find oat infected with this Puccinia striformis. No alternate host is known and the disease is confined by the environmental factors to the greater extent than either stem rust or leaf rust. So basically, when the environmental condition is suitable for this fungus, they can infect the plant and there is no alternate host for this fungus. So disease development occur at lower temperature than are optimal for leaf and stem rust. Uridia develop in the narrow yellow linear stripes. So we can see this linear stripes, yellow linear stripes, mainly on the leaves and the spikelets, right? Means they infect the inflorescence also, but basically they infect the leaves. When the heads are infected, the pustules appears on the inner surface of the glumes and the lemmas. So these are the parts of the inflorescence of the wheat. Okay, the glumes and the lemmas occasionally invading the developing kernel, so they can infect the kernels also that bears the seeds, right? So this is quite severe infection. The uridospores are yellow to orange in color, more or less spherical, accumulate and 28 to 34 micrometer in diameter. So this is micrometer in diameter. The teleospores apparently serves no function. They are quite dark brown, two-celled and similar in the size and shape to those of Puccinia recondita. So what we have seen in the case of Puccinia recondita, similar type of teleospores are present in stripe rust case. The telea developed on the leaf blades and sheath as dark brown to black stripes and remain covered by the epidermis. So they are not exposed, they are again covered by the epidermis region. The uridospores and the mycelium persist through the winter on the fall-sown cereals and grasses in areas where the temperatures are not extreme. So, this uridospores and the mycelium persist through the winter. They are present in the winter on fall-sown cereals and the grasses in areas where the temperature is not extreme. Aggressive secondary spread occurs. So, after the primary spread, there is an secondary spread, means it can infect the new crop of the wheat, and it occurs during the cool temperatures of the spring. So new highly virulent races of the striped rust have recently appeared in Europe, Australia and the Andean region of the South America. So some other virulent races are now being found of this striped rust, and they has been reported in Europe, Australia and the Andean region of South America. So this is all about this session. We will have one more session to complete some more fungal diseases in croplands. Thank you very much.